accident, an element of chance that had created this invisible killer. Except he hadn't left it to chance at all. Morris was already showing signs of flu. He'd been smart in his choice of bacteria. Legionella wasn't common, but it did happen. With the location he had chosen, it was unlikely that anyone else would be affected. To stand any chance of inheriting whatever fortune Morris had hidden away in that dump of a flat, he needed to be totally unconnected to any of this. He retrieved the fast food container from his bag. The right environment was needed for it to flourish, or at least to look like it had. Lowering it into position at the bottom of the ventilation shaft, he retrieved the wire and placed it into his bag. After uncoiling the fishing wire he'd already tied to the metal, he popped the lid. In his experiments, the rusty surface had proven a good medium for the bacteria. He stretched his arms and teased the metal from its watery box. Standing, he carefully lowered the metal plate down the shaft. He fed the fishing line between his fingers, waiting until it settled on a solid surface before grabbing the torch to check its progress. Content that it had reached its final resting place in the food container, he settled it flat. Morris would get weaker and weaker now, and soon he would struggle to breathe. Morris already had a slight fever. He'd seen it earlier when he dropped off some shopping. Only a little longer would push him over the edge. Morris had to suffer, and he wanted to watch every minute of it. He'd quickly shelved his hit-and-run idea. Morris didn't deserve to go that swiftly. A warmth filled his chest as he pictured himself telling Morris exactly what he had done, just before the end. Morris needed to see the pain that he himself had felt for so many years. He snipped the fishing wire and coiled it around his hand before pocketing it. He only needed to add the bacteria-laden water. Then he could sit back and watch it unfold. Chapter 2. Lexi Ryan stretched out across the bed, expecting to clash with part of Helen's body at some point, only to be thwarted. Had it all been a dream? She rested on her elbows as she quickly scanned the dimly lit room for anything that would point to Helen's presence. Once her gaze landed on a familiar black coat on the chair in the corner of her bedroom, relief flooded her. For so many nights, she'd dreamt of Helen in this bed. She couldn't face waking up to disappointment again. It was hard to believe that almost 2 months had passed since they had met up again. Lately, she'd relapsed into acting like a teenager, living for the weekends when Helen visited. She smiled to herself as she thought about their first meeting all those months ago in Warner. Despite their rocky introduction, they seemed to bring out the best in one another, at least in Lexi's eyes. Impersonating a police officer may not have been the best idea, but her choices were limited at the time. In the end, she'd assisted in apprehending a serial arsonist and a hit-and-run murderer during her stint as DC Kate Wolfe, hadn't she? Although it still didn't make up for the fact that she had also taken a life during her time there. Richard Jarvis had attempted to grab a knife as he'd barreled towards her before falling and cracking his head on the floor, but the circumstances made little difference to her. Was he even a victim? Hadn't her sister been the real victim? Not to mention all the other children he'd abused during his sick life. No matter how much she sugarcoated it, the harsh truth was that if she hadn't been there, it would never have happened. Her desire to inflict revenge and face her sister's sexual abuser had been too strong. She could have persecuted him for months before exposing him if she'd put her mind to it. Instead, she had gone for shock tactics. In her panic, as he scrambled towards her, she'd missed the knife entirely. She could never have fought him off. He had been too well built. Her limbs twitched at the thought of having to fight for her life. It could have ended so differently. What if she'd been the one dead on the kitchen floor? Would he have called the police? Would he have got away with it? What about her mother? Who would have been left to look after her then? Her decision to escape Warner with her freedom had been her only option, but leaving Helen behind was one of the most difficult things she'd ever done. Their last conversation, unsurprisingly, wasn't a great success. She had, after all, cheated her way into Helen's heart. Time was all she could offer.